Hello, this is Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. Today we are continuing a devotional on the guarding and unguarding of the heart, and we're going to make a distinction between guarding and hardening the heart, because hardening has a negative implication and guarding a positive implication. And then we're also going to kind of give a brief nod to when the heart needs to be unguarded, which is very close to making sure that it's not hardened. So I started off this devotional series talking about my personal journey as a child and how emotionally entangled I was, kind of imprisoned by my emotions as a young child. I talked about then when I got into my late teens and into my early 20s, I faced a number of different crises and struggled with suicide and depression because of the overwhelming emotions that I wasn't able to manage. And so I was a bit out of control. And I remember once I learned to guard my heart, to make my mind hold the thought captive before I let my emotions go crazy on it. And when I did that, I started to manage the thoughts that impacted my feelings. And in doing so, holding them captive and working through the true or falseness of the issues that I was dealing with, or the situations that presented themselves, and how I was able to deal with them. And when I got to things that were extremely difficult, I started to integrate allowing the peace of God to keep my emotions in check. And so it says that the peace of God will guard your heart and mind. And so I started to allow that to happen, and that became very restorative as well. And so holistically, big picture, I was doing far better than I had done in years. By the time I got into my mid-20s, I was doing far better with learning how to hold myself accountable to the thoughts I was having and not letting them just take my emotions for a ride, so to say. But what became very important was that as you learn to guard your heart, even if you're a very emotional person, there can be a tendency towards being completely unemotional, having no emotion or no affect whatsoever. And that is a problem, because of course then there's no expression, there's not human expression. And that is important, because emotions are important. They just can't drive the car. That's what I learned over time, is that it's important to have emotions. They can ride in the car with you because they can be good navigators of where you are, right? But they are not important if they're not important enough to drive the car to tell you where you're about to go. Because if you let emotions drive, they'll take you anywhere. And by the time you arrive there, you may find you never wanted to be there. So what happens though when you completely stifle emotions is you end up what the Bible refers to as a hardened heart. And we see it in both the Old and the New Testament, but it's being warned against. And so the people who didn't listen, people who were not teachable, people who were not reachable, were people who had a hardened heart. They just didn't want to receive anything. They were just callous and cold. And so in order to prevent that place of hardening the heart, you also have to remember that the bitter or negative thoughts that make you shut people off, or not want to deal with people, or not value people, or disregard what they have to say, also have to be managed. Those thoughts and feelings have to be worked through just as much as the feelings that make you want to gush all of your emotions and kind of fall apart, or cry until you can't cry anymore. They need to be managed as well, because what you're really saying when you're guarding the heart and preventing the heart from going too far is you're saying that how I think and many times how I feel as a regard of how I think is not always accurate, is not always honest, and it's not always true. My thoughts and feelings cannot always be trusted, because I have a way of viewing things that may or may not be accurate for the circumstances. And then sometimes my way of viewing things is accurate, but not important, is not essential to continuing on. And so even if I feel like someone's mistreating me, it may or may not be the issue that is most pressing at the time. It may not be the concern that I need to put my interest and my focus on, because people will mistreat you and you will endure hardship, and some people will be wrong in the way that they do things to you. But what benefit do we have if we let our emotions continue to recycle those negative thoughts? And so it's important that though the heart remains soft, even though it is not allowing these negative things to overwhelm it or consume it. And so what does that mean? It still has an exchange. The heart is still movable. It can be changed. So if a person seems to be someone who is unkind or unfriendly or unresponsive to you, and it makes you feel a certain way, we keep the mind and the heart in a place in which we say, you know what, that's okay. That this is how I'm feeling, and this may be indeed how they're treating me, but it's really not essential to the matter. And we let the heart be willing to change its mind, right? And so the mind can be changed and the heart can be adapted to what needs to happen next. And so you can still learn from the environment as things change. You can learn from people as they change. And so the heart is still teachable and malleable, but it's still under our control, right? I'm not letting, just because I'm not as a strict disciplinarian of the heart, doesn't mean that I let my heart go rogue, right? It doesn't go on a vacation without me, right? I don't let it wander on its own. I keep good accountability with my heart and then in my relationship with God, but I keep that still in a way in which I'm supervising what's happening. And as I see things go into negative places or into directions that seem unhealthy, either positively or negatively, I start to rein that heart back in and make it accountable again and say, okay, well, you've gone too far. Now you need to come back. And so really what guarding the heart and unguarding the heart and keeping the heart from being hardened is a really deep engagement with oneself, especially for people like me who are naturally prone to being more emotional. And so when that's happening, it doesn't mean it's going to be instant that you'll learn to guard and unguard the heart and have a softened heart, but still give it directions. It's like any other way of learning discipline. You learn to discipline yourself one step at a time. We learn to discipline children one step at a time. No one becomes an excellent parent overnight. No, they make some mistakes. They get into some things that they're like, oh, I don't know why I did that. And then they learn from that. But because you're with yourself all the time, you have this beautiful opportunity to say to yourself, you know what, you've been in this type of situation before. You felt this way before. And what it yielded to was this when you let it go. So don't do that this time. Why don't you hold back and see? Why don't you wait and let's find out? Why don't you let this time pass and stop valuing the opinion of others so much so that it keeps you in a bondage to wanting to feel a certain way? Because I hear people say that often, you just don't know the way they made me feel. And it's like, well, they didn't make you do anything, right? They can't make you feel anything because your feelings belong to you. Well, they took me to this level. And it's like, well, they didn't really take you anywhere either. I mean, it's a figure of speech, I understand, but we have to be careful to recognize that no person can take your emotions anywhere that you don't want them to go. They're your emotions. They belong to you, and you are indeed the master of it. If you're going to be an excellent teacher of your emotions, then first you need to realize that you have authority over those emotions. If you're going to be a person who's disciplined in character and in attitude and in behavior, if you're going to be a person whose heart is not all over the place melting, but still is not hardened, you need to learn how to yield the heart. You need to learn how to use it like clay and move it into the ways that it needs to be, which means you need a moral compass and a standing. And so it's very difficult for a person to guard their heart and treat their heart like clay when they have no standing or no compass, meaning they have no faith perspective, right? And this is why one of the reasons why faith is very important is because when we have no faith, when we have no principles, no guiding principles in our life, then where are we shaping and moving the heart to be? Sometimes we'll think the heart is okay being a certain way, even if it doesn't match up to a standard, because there is no standard, because there is no standard. And we know that when a person or a man thinks that this is the way that something should go, the end of that path can often lead into destruction. And so we know that we need to use a standard, and a standard really should be the word, but in the sense of the character of God. If his character and our character aren't the same, then we have a problem. If we see we're doing things that we know he wouldn't approve of, God wouldn't approve of, Jesus wouldn't approve of, then we know that we're breaking the standard and we're somehow letting our emotions take us into another realm. So if I'm going off on everybody because they've done me wrong, because I feel a certain way, I'm not justifying justified in my feelings to be able to continue in that path. But I need to know that I'm not justified because that character is unacceptable. So I need to have a standard. And so what happens as we start to soften the heart, not making it hard, and we start to guard it and unguard it as is appropriate, is that we start to really master this part of our soul. We really start to say the soul is the work of man. This is the part of man that we get to shape and we get to change. We get to choose what we're going to be. And so as we start to move with the heart and form the heart in these regards, then we find that we will be better equipped to deal with people in all different types of lives and situations. And why am I saying that? Because the scripture gives us evidence that we have free will. We get to decide. And that deciding comes from both what we think and how we feel. And then will is how we act on what we thought and meditated on and what our heart has received. And so no one else gets to make those decisions but us. Those were something precious opportunities we've been given to do the right thing, but it is our choice. And so I want to encourage you to not only read these passages. So let me give you the passage for the guarding of the heart. I don't think I gave you that. Hebrews 3 is mentioned 2 times in Hebrews 3:8 and 3:15. But also remembering that the hardening of the heart, that's about the hardening of the heart. But also remember that the guarding and the unguarding of the heart and how those elements work are also found in Proverbs 4 for the guarding of the heart, 4:23, and Philippians 4:7 is letting the peace of God protect your heart and mind. And so we want to be able to navigate through what's going on in our heart using wisdom. For me, it was a very, very, very important skill because I became a counselor far later on in life than I was a teacher. But if I couldn't get my emotions together, it's very difficult for me to, one, discipline the students when I worked in the classroom, and two, be able to discipline myself enough to give wise advice to those whom I counsel. And so the emotions can't be out of control, because a person could tell you anything in a counseling session that could blow your mind in the sense that you never would have thought of it, and then your emotions go with it, and then you're as out of control as they are. That can't be a possibility. One needs to be able to have compassion, but not become extremely emotional. And so this was an important skill, not just for my livelihood, for me to be well and to not suffer with depression and suicide and all these things, but also it was a very important part of the skill set I needed to do the work that God was calling me to do so many years after my childhood that I wouldn't have even guessed. This is not something I've always desired to do and knew where I was going. No, but it's something that God brought me into because he taught me to do what he wants me to help others do as well. And that's to be in control of their emotions. And it's a big, big deal. And so unguarding the heart and softening the heart are skills that really we need to do if we're going to be well. We want to encourage you to look at the passages that I've described just a moment ago, but also to continue in prayer and meditation about what needs to happen for your heart. If your heart struggles with being guarded, unguarded, and hard and soft, then it's okay. There's hope, and we're praying for you. We're praying that you would heal, live, and grow. Because that is our mission for you. But we're also hoping that you will really take heed to thoughts and information like this to see if it has a result or impact in your life or the life of someone else you know. We'll see you again tomorrow with the rest of our devotional series. Until then, please be blessed.